My name is Debra Scacco. I like to joke that I'm the guest who will never go away because I have been collaborating with Andrea on this project for 5 years. Um, and so I'm an artist and a curator, and I've been making work about the LA River for almost 15 years, and that kind of expanded into broader water systems and looking at the interconnection of all living things, especially in relation to water. And so Andrea very generously approached me about collaborating on brackish water, because as we like to say, she grew up with 1 foot in the ocean. I grew up with 2 feet firmly on concrete. And so the LA River is very much like home for me. And so brackish water, scientifically, brackish water is water that is not fresh and not salt, right? And so for a long time, we kept thinking that we were missing something in that definition. But the more scientists we spoke with, the more that was the kind of shorthand for how they define what brackish water is, right? So this idea of something that is defined by what it is not, I think is really, really fascinating and really extraordinary. Brackish spaces are important for a lot of reasons. So like the most typical instance of brackishness is going to be where the river meets the sea, right? So, and we're not far from that, from where the LA River meets the Pacific Ocean down at the port, right? And so brackish spaces tend to be spaces of safety. There's like, it protects young marine life from currents. So if you think about, like, waves can be pretty intense sometimes. In brackish waters, they're a little calmer because you have a lot of vegetation. You have, like, I keep doing this because they're kind of they're kind of murky, right? Like brackish waters, like if you've heard Andrea talk about it, she'll talk about them being stinky because she stuck her foot in them a couple of times, and it did stink. And but they're like, they're like mud flats, seawater, fresh water, so they're protective spaces. The other thing is that estuaries are known as lungs of the sea. So they can kind of, when we, in LA, it really is like feast or famine when it comes to water, right? So when we get these huge rains that happen, brackish spaces have the ability to hold the water and then release it very, very slowly. So it's natural flood mitigation. So there are lots of scientific reasons for the importance of brackish water. But then as we were talking about it, really, like, brackishness is a third space, right? And so what is a third space if not a multicultural city? I grew up in New York City in an Italian neighborhood that was surrounded by lots of other ethnic neighborhoods, and we created third cultures together, right? Because, like, I had my version of being Italian, folks had their own version of being other cultures, and then together we create this third space that could be only of that place. And so we really started thinking about brackishness not just as this, like, scientific in between, but also as a kind of metaphorical in between, where we are living side by side with multiple cultures. We become friends, we grow families, we have babies, we go to school together, we share food together. And so all of those things make this really special, really beautiful third space. And so when we talk about brackishness, we're talking both about the scientific aspects of brackishness as well as the kind of metaphorical aspects of brackishness.
That's yes. Great.
And I'll just briefly say, as a part of the project, Andrea and I co-taught 2 semesters here at Cal State Dominguez Hills of a course titled Art and Water, where we had a number of amazing students. We also had a couple of Getty MUI interns who helped us with the project, and we love them so much that we hired one of them to be our project manager. So big props to Michelle Santos. And so, we've been really lucky to be able to work really directly with students in the process to also learn, like, what does this project mean at this space in particular. So I hope that when you see the show inside, you'll also take a minute to reflect on those ideas.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? I was going to talk about the kind of machine aspect of this. I mean, this is really, in a way, a situationalist work. Situationalist work refers in art history to kind of art that's referring to situations that happen in the world around us. And so one of the guiding questions I think Debra and Andrea had for this amazing campus is, how do you make a place that wants to be a swamp again? I mean, this part of the world would normally have brackish water. And because of the way that we have strategized since colonization, how to keep private property and all that goes with it safe from floods, we've also managed to keep ourselves devoid of the biodiversity that comes with brackish water. So primordial ooze is what I like to call it. You know, how do we bring back the primordial ooze from which life emerges? And so this is one of those strategies. It's a strategy, it's a situationalist kind of object that thinks about, could we, or what if we could, capture the rainwater and move it through a network of bins that are in effect doing the work of modularizing a swamp, so that water could be cleansed in its journey. In this particular case, the return for the work is this delightful vitrine full of living systems. But it could equally spill out onto this lawn and become a garden, or become a place that you grew medicine, or a pollinator corridor. So what this really is using using what nature does on its own, which is filtering water through plants, and providing it to spaces where you maybe don't have access to land ownership, or you don't own your own land, and figuring out how you can have a garden, or biodiversity, or a medicine, and be off the grid. So what's going on here is we've put a 5,000 gallon water tank that you can buy at a store, got some Home Depot shelving, taken an agricultural bin and made a window on it. And then the only real cost of the project is that we had these custom bins made that are working at a scale where we could only need 3, right? So we were trying to think about, how small does something need to be in order to clean, and in our particular case, it was in order to clean LA river water, so that we could get rid of most of the pathogens that you wouldn't want to spread on a schoolyard, specifically E. coli, and to some extent, some of the other nasty things that go into the river, like arsenic or lead. And what plants do normally is metabolize some of that stuff. And so we are using here riparian plants from the LA River that we cultivate at Metabolic Studio. And they've been super happy here. In fact, happier here than at Metabolic Studio. So this is about as good as it's ever looked. So as the Harrisons, who are also in this amazing show, like to say, a swamp wants to be a swamp again. So when you're looking at sites to install things, a really good rule of thumb is to think, what is the story of this place? What does it want to be? And how can I make objects that in some way uplift and celebrate this particular location? We also add sound to these pieces, because if you listen, you'll hear a drone. That drone in the background is, we run a drone of the week at Metabolic Studio, which is, we try and listen to what drone both makes us feel best, and it might change seasonally, but then we test that water with each drone to see if it has any impact on the amount of bacteria that forms in the stored water. So what you're getting here is D minor, And that is the drone sound that keeps the most bacteria from forming in that stored water. And why that's important is, in this case, since we're not releasing the water from the portable wetland out, we're circulating it back. So we don't want to circulate it back and have it form bacteria in it and then have to clean it again. So that's the logic behind that. And then the other logic is, you'll hear there's frog and cricket sounds in there. That's to tell all the insects, there's a swamp here, come and enjoy yourself. And that brings with it all the lovely things that insects bring. So this is an object for the show that hopefully enchants a multi-species audience, not just us, but it's an offering to all the critters and the fauna that want to make this campus their home. And this is meant to encourage them to feel comfortable here. Any questions?
What is the origin of the drone sound?
Oh, how's it made? It's a computer-generated drone sound. So
Purposefully made.
well, we knew that sound has agency to kill bacteria in stored water. So we wanted to find the right drone sound for this time of year in this place. So we experimented with all of them and came up with this one.
Thank you so much. And so the drone sound is not from a generator or a mechanical device?
No, there's a speaker inside the...
So it's an actual sound that you designed or you've discovered that helps
keep the bacteria in the 5,000-gallon water tank.
Wow. So the sound is your functional art piece as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question?
So I guess my question is more like, from the origin of like the project beginning, did it ever change, and what was the most overwhelming part?
Good question. So when we started the experiment, we experimented with different, we don't have soil in there, so the different things that we're planting plants in, we experimented with. And so this material is volcanic scoria. And I'm really excited about that. So this is a really lightweight, material, which makes it easier. You can pass it around. At the beginning, we explored gravel, clay pellets, coconut coir, and scoria, or volcanic rock. And the one that did the best in the movement of water through the system and the cleaning of water was gravel. But the carbon imprint on making gravel is really high. So the one that did the worst was coconut coir, because it got anaerobic really quickly. So it did a good job for a short time, but over time it kind of like collapsed in on itself and became really smelly. The clay pellets did pretty good, but they're really expensive to buy at a scale. And the winner was the volcanic scoria. It's light, and it also has an interesting new thing that we're researching. It could be pseudoscience or it could be science, but the pseudoscience is that there's a magnetic pull in volcanic rock that comes from its proximity to volcanoes. So it pulls ions of water faster through a system, through some kind of magnetic attraction, than other kinds of rock. So it seems to have an added motility plus. The other thing that we've noticed that's really nice about it is that it's really got very jagged edges. And so the root system of plants wrap themselves around that scoria really, really nicely, like they become sort of one organism of roots and rocks. in a very different way than the smoothness of the clay pellets or the smallness of the gravel. So it really seems to bond and bind well with the plants. And when the plants when it does get anaerobic, it takes about 6 months to a year longer. We've been working with the portable wetland as a work since about 2015. So no, maybe a little later, but 8 to 10 years of exploration of this, and the idea behind it is a utility. That art has utility, right? That this could be both a sculpture and a machine for application. So the idea is that we could put these on schoolyards, we could put these on parking lots, anywhere that you have a flat roof where you could collect water or rainwater. If you put this, you could run water through the system, unpave a parking lot, and add cleaner water to the ground without being connected to the municipal water supply. So that was the kind of concept behind it, and it kind of came from the kind of activist posture that the studio has. We just noticed, since it's an election time, that when people gather for protests, like when they gathered for protest at Standing Rock, and when they gathered for protest even before that at Zuccotti Park in New York, that when people wanted to stop the protests, they shut off the water supply. So the idea of having some kind of control over your water supply and some kind of control around the access to clean water could be made simple if you had a tool like this to kind of clean your water and know that the stuff that will really hurt you, like E. coli, will be taken care of. So the idea of a modular unit that you could easily set up and easily remove was the challenge. So that was kind of finding the right substrate and finding a user's manual to it, so that people understand, if you can get solar and you can get water from a flat roof, then you can have clean water. And it can be like a kind of external well. But it's also using biomimicry to just do things that a brackish water location would normally do for its water supply if we let it be a brackish water location.
Hello. So I know you mentioned you spoke a little bit about the sound aspect to the piece, and so I was just curious, did you, through other projects, notice a correlation between like the incorporation of natural sounds, whether it be, frogs, crickets, that sort of thing, and whether or not it had any effects on the surrounding environment?
It's a really good question. Yeah, like at the studio we have had frogs there, and the studio is like right by the train tracks, which are 2 lines of train tracks on either side of the LA River, surrounded by industrial buildings. So hearing frogs was very confusing to birds and insects and other animals. And it really brought up a big ethical question. Were we tricking the birds and critters into thinking that there was more abundance there than there was? So we stopped using the frogs sounds in favor of the drone. Then we missed the frog sounds. So in general, we only use the frog sounds if it isn't going to be a trick for the insects. Now we've cultivated enough food and biodiversity on our site that by using the frogs, there's plenty for the insects and the animals to get to. But at first, we didn't realize it, but we kind of created a false idea of bounty. So we cut that out, and that's when we started to use the drone, which none of the critters like very much. And it really led me to be really interested in sound works in environmental projects. And one of the interesting projects I discovered was at UC Santa Cruz. There was a professor in the music department who'd actually patented a way that he'd figured out how to keep bark beetles from eating the forests in UC Santa Cruz. And it was a simple hack that he patented, but it was brilliant. And that is that he discovered that if he recorded the sound of the bark beetle eating the forest and played it backwards, the bark beetles went away. So that was just a really cool kind of one of those like life hacks, right? Like everybody's trying to think about these big solutions about healing things, and he figured out that sound actually worked. And so that's being widely used in the forests around UC Santa Cruz. Any other questions?
I had a question about the tank and some of the design that went into the water. So I'm guessing this water then was straight out of the LA River or some other source that was potentially not pristine. And then as it comes through here, you know, if this is a closed loop, I'm seeing the dribbling rate here in the last tank, and I'm thinking that probably like on the order of a week or so that the water would stay in that big tank. I don't know exactly, but I guess I'm wondering what sort of, if there's any baseline like water quality data you had before you began the project, and then as it goes on, to what level of cleanliness is it brought? And you mentioned like monitoring for anaerobic or bacteria, and so I'm wondering kind of what sort of water chemistry and science is on it.
So yes, when you do this scientifically, you're absolutely right. It takes about a day per bin for the water to move through each of these bins. So in this particular case, you're looking at a 3-day cycle to get to here, and then it cycles right back. So water's probably moving through this system twice a week. And it's definitely getting cleaner all the time. We're not really testing the water, are we? So if we tried to incentivize that, but I don't think that we got to it. We've done that at Metabolic, and it's incredibly like precise. You kind of milk each of these systems right in between each of the tanks. You'll see there's a nozzle that you turn, and you measure it. So the way we got our results was by weekly measurement of the water supply and taking copious notes on each of the things that were in the LA River. And the purpose of that for us was to see if we could avoid using chlorine in the LA River before we distribute it to public space. So we would prefer to avoid killing everything, which chlorine does, in favor of killing only what you need to kill to keep people and animals safe. But it is quite a bit. It's a weekly monitoring system that needs to go on, and pretty soon it probably can be done with computers. But we were doing it with people.
At your studio, how long did it take then before you saw an equilibrium sort of reach some minimum level, like months or?
We saw that it only took one cycle through portable wetland to take care of the E. coli. So it took 3 days to get enough E. coli out to be able to use that, but not to meet code 22. So the code for water being given to a public space is different from water going onto your own garden, right? So one pass through the system removed enough E. coli for us to use on our experimental site on Development 1. We only use water from the rain. So all of our water goes through our portable wetland, and it only goes through once before it's spread. Unless it's been a big rain event, and then all of our network, we have about 15 of those rain barrels that fill up, and they just continue to circulate until the water's needed. So in LA, And in this part of the world in general, the issue is not having too little water, it's having too much water to store. So the big question, and why those big tanks are interesting, is that you would probably want to have something like 15 tanks that big up against a building this size to be working at capacity. Like, if you wanted this whole lawn to be irrigated with food that you could eat on this campus, you could do it with that building. I recommend you advocate for that. I recommend that if this show has any agency for you, say, hey, we would like to take the roof at LaCourte Hall and funnel all the water when it rains into a network of 15 tanks. Keep the portable wetland, and when the water leaves, we would like to create an allotment garden out here to grow food and medicine. And all you would need is one building. That's what we're doing. And if you do that, I will give you this whole thing. Okay? But I would like to see it used, right? Because this is a tool. So it's nice as a sculpture, but our challenge is to get people to do their own advocacy about why this makes sense. And again, it's helpful to learn because if you went to an elementary school and you saw a building half this big, you would be able to say, hey, we need 7 bins. And we're going to put sound in all of those 7 bins so that we can store water. And we're going to have a much smaller garden, maybe the size of a small circle. And we want to grow willow because we want to create shade, and we want it to be connected to Tongva and Gabrielino methodology, and we're going to harvest that willow to make a new classroom out of willow. That would be a huge win for this kind of thing, right? So we will bring you these portable wetlands. So what we're looking for is to encourage community to say, yeah, let's go out and make this happen. And what we're doing at the studio every Tuesday is hosting teach-ins about how that would work. So if any of you want to learn more, come on a Tuesday at 11:30 and have a tour of our Undevelopment 2 project, where we're turning a 15,000-foot warehouse into a bed for the cleansed LA River. And then on Friday the 13th, our Optimist Breakfast will be listening to all of your proposals for how these kinds of projects could work in your community, and seeing if we can get behind with our team and our muscle making that happen. So again, the idea of making an object like this is to think that another art world is possible, one where actually transforming the way we build community, the way we define the labor of art through maintenance and care. It's a new paradigm that has to be part of undevelopment. We have to think not just about making art and offering it up for someone to buy, but thinking about making art that we then offer up to hive mind about how it can be used out there, and how we can hack into educational systems to think about the possibility that art can have the agency to transform our world a few parking spots at a time. Is that a good rally to end things with? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.